I really like the phrase hope for the best, but prepare for the worst. I think there's still hope. I was just reading an article that made a good argument that, with just the few degrees of warming that we've seen already, we're seeing these almost exponential disasters and health consequences occur. But the same argument can be said, well, if we can reduce it by just a degree or two, or avoid an extra degree or so of warming, the same can be said for how much we can mitigate those consequences. And so I don't think that we're hopeless by any means. In fact, I think if people feel hopeless, it can cause some sort of paralysis in action, and people are not inspired to change or to take action on things. So I think a message of hope is probably important. And I think we're right at that critical point where we could avoid a lot of disaster and potentially have a livable future if we can act. And I think there still is time to act, and we need to do so.
I do feel hopeful. I do. My main thread is I feel hopeful. I mean, what can you do but just, hope and trust and be optimistic. The alternative isn't really very much fun. Like I said before, there are days when it's harder, when it's more of a struggle. But I am fully committed, and a number of people I know and the people I work with, we are fully committed. And no matter what, we are committed. And I can't imagine what would change that commitment. It only gets stronger as time goes on.
I guess more than hope, I would say I trust that people will pull through and do what they need to do. I think, yes, absolutely. I hope, but I like to think that I have a little more trust and faith in humanity than merely hope.
I think what I really hope for is getting past the point where climate change as a term feels political, and seeing the broad array of effects of climate change then translate into action.
I do feel hopeful that we're maybe at that or near that tipping point with social change, where it has been a long grind for people who've been at this for a while, but it does feel like there's some momentum and energy behind it, with more and more people getting involved, that I do hope we are at one of those kind of exponential periods of growth or change that you commonly see with different social movements.
I think I feel a lot of hope about just people getting involved and people opening their eyes more and more. Like we talked about at the beginning, I think it used to be a really loaded conversation, and more I'm hearing it be sort of an accepted conversation, even in areas of our society where it was really kind of a taboo subject before. It's, even if people sort of want to shut their ears to it, it's something they're kind of coming around to. So I think in that sense, I do feel hopeful about just growing awareness and increasing engagement.
The good news is there are people that are committed, and that's part of that public health juggernaut, is they've learned enough to know that it's real. As there's this generation of young people that are really interested in preserving our resources into perpetuity, so they would like a good place to live, raise their children, and a guarantee that their grandchildren's grandchildren could live in a nice place and be healthy.
Like, one of the most therapeutic things you can do is find others, like you said, with those shared values, and not feel like you're alone in your concerns. It's easy to maybe feel almost like you're in this apocalypse mode and look around and everybody's just behaving as if nothing's wrong, and that can be really crushing. So yeah, connecting with other people who are passionate can be therapeutic in itself.
All this damage that we've been doing, like all the species that we have demolished, like it's very sad, and it hurts me as like a conservationist. But in the end, nature's going to go on. Whether or not humanity wants to continue surviving is pretty much up to us.
I feel absolutely
hopeful about the creativity and the compassion and the possibility for change in humans. And I think we can do it. And I also think that it's not going to be easy, and we're going to lose a lot too. We already have. So I hold both in the same space, and that we have to have space for grieving and sadness. But as a mom to a little girl, I don't have a choice but to work towards a hopeful future.
I definitely dub myself as a pretty optimistic person. And do think if actions really do start to happen and things seem to be moving, but also I don't know if they seem to be moving fast enough. And there's a lot of these really big red flags that are evident right now, i.e. heat waves, i.e. smoke, i.e. drought, that make me a lot less hopeful. But I do recognize that we have a really powerful ability to adapt. And I really hope that some of these red flags are triggers for people who may be more resistant to believing these things. And that, yes, it's really scary what's happening now. And yes, it's really bad for our climate, but maybe these are scary enough things to provoke more action.
We do need to adapt. That's part of the solution. So we should be preparing, even if we solve this issue today, the planet's already changed enough that we're going to have to get used to a new climate. So yeah, we need to, settle in on being smart about decisions that we're making and adapting to new conditions. But at the same time, I'm hopeful. I'm absolutely hopeful. I don't really know any other way to be, and I think there are a lot of the technology is there, the policies are there. It's really about implementation, or a lot of the technology is there. And if it's not there right now, it's coming quickly. So the tools are going to be there, and that's, gives me a lot of hope.
It's easy to think, this world is too complex. We can't really make these changes. Humans are how they are, blah, blah, blah. But I know that we can. I don't know how to get us to do it, but I'm confident that we can if we, are able.
Yeah, I think there's always hope. I really do. But I think that the best hope is the kind that's not a wish. It's the kind that has some teeth behind it with actions and organizing. So I think we need both of those things in order to have the most vibrant hope for a livable future. But I think it's really important to remember that we really have the opportunity to prevent future losses through actions now, whether that's wildlife species, ways of life, environmental degradation. We do have the opportunity to mitigate some of those impacts, if not prevent them entirely. And I think without hope, I would just hate to see a loss of motivation for protecting what we can. Part of looking at a livable future is reassessing ideas of comfort and really thinking about that a high level of well-being could be available for a wide range of people with a bit of sacrifice individually. So I think part of this idea of a livable future is that we can't continue our way of life as is, but with some doable and actionable changes, I think there's a lot of hope.
I think climate adaptation solutions are critical for humans right now. It's just going to be something that has to happen. I mean, climate adaptation solutions have to happen. And I think that new plans of how we operate, I think it's becoming almost like for lack of a better word, like the sexy thing. Like Teslas are cool cars and they're good for the environment. So if we can make it like cool, then I think people will catch on.
And even if we can't avoid all consequences, we still have to try, because if we can avoid some, that could have a huge impact on the future health of our children and our grandchildren. Now, at the same time, we do need to be preparing for what's already happening. I mean, I talked about preparing my patients for evacuation plans and for what to do when these extreme heat events occur, because they already are occurring. And so to not do that, I think, is a big disservice to the health of our populations. So I think we need to do both in tandem: prepare for the worst and still hope for the best.
I guess it does give me hope that so many young people are so involved and understand the dire nature. And I think it is possible if to improve things a lot. I really hope for the future that it gets better for your generation. I hope more people get involved. I think we have to get involved politically.
I hope that our youth remain hopeful. And I think just like with adults, one of the ways we remain hopeful is by working on a problem. And so whether it's climate change or another issue, we do feel more hope when we're working on it, even if we don't win all the battles. Bob has a good quote.
Yeah, so we think of climate change as the world's greatest group participation project. We either all win together or we all lose.